Thank you, Carly. Can everybody hear me? Rick?
Yes,
can
we
you-
can hear you.
Okay, good. Welcome, everybody. My name is Alan Palais, and this is the Sunday morning service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. I am a member of the congregation and will be leading the service today. We are a congregation that welcomes all, whether you're seeing us with spirits high or spirits low, we welcome you. Whether your beliefs tend toward atheism or theism, liberalism or conservatism, we welcome you. So whoever you are, wherever you are, whomever you love, we are glad you are with us today. Unitarian Universalism is built on 7 ethical principles. We will hear more about these principles in our service this morning. In addition to our principles, our UU culture promotes the notion that wisdom can be found from many sources, with a special place held by reason and science, but can also be found in art and spiritual intuition. We believe we have much to learn from the great thinkers of the past, but in building the future, we are not permanently tied to any past theology or ideology. With these values in mind, we consider a wide array of speakers and topics at our various Sunday morning services. We have ministers, guest ministers, members of our congregation, lay speakers from the and lay speakers from outside our fellowship. Okay, we are ready for announcements. If you have an announcement, please unmute and give your announcement.
Good morning, I'm Miranda, and I'm the chair of the membership committee. And the membership committee and both Reverend Carey and Reverend Dave are going to present a UU 101 class next week at 12:30. And everyone is welcome to come. I'll be sending out a general Zoom invitation so that you don't have to worry about remembering how to register. You don't even have to register, just show up if you'd like. Let's see, I want to remember to say everything. Apropos of this service, Reverend Carey and Reverend Dave will be speaking on the history, philosophy, theology of Unitarian Universalism. So if you are a visitor or a longtime member, join us for some of their insight and some of their wonderful background knowledge. Join us. Happy to have you. Anyone.
Hi, my name is
Linda.
Yeah, this is just a quick reminder for those members of the board who are here today. We were going to have a quick little meeting afterwards to sort of discuss where we are with COVID and the potential of meeting in person again. So just a reminder.
Trish, do you have some?
Okay, yeah. Hi, my name is Patricia Rooney, and I am a member of the Social Action Group. And I wanted to announce that the state maps have been voted on and are now the law of the land, although they may be challenged. These maps are much better than what we've had in the past, even though they're not perfect. Which one of us is perfect? But I'm not going to complain about these maps. They are, again, far better than what we've had in the past. So I would like to invite anyone interested in knowing more about how they affect your community to come to statewide discussion about the maps that will take place 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday this week. And you can get a link to register to that at fairdistrictspa.com under events. So, look forward to a better future politically in PA. Also, the congressional maps have gone to the state Supreme Court and are being discussed there. And they will have a meeting February 18th that will be live streamed, and you can see what they have to say or find out later. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Trish. Okay, now we come to lighting the chalice. Before I do that, I want to read some words written by Reverend Judith Quarles. At this hour in small towns and big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light our chalice today, let us remember that we are part of a great community of faith. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universal ideas of love, justice, and truth. I have a makeshift home chalice. It's just a small candle, but it will serve the purpose. Most of us in our congregation recognize the name Quarles. Judith Quarles, who wrote those words, is the mother of Emily Quarles Maurer, a member of our congregation and a frequent and very talented speaker. I don't see her here today, but I could see where she got her talents in speaking when I saw those words. Okay, now. Now we will have hymn 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. And I'm going to, Carly, can you wait till I project the words? Okay, Carly. Thank you, Carly. Bear with me, I'm setting myself up here. We now come to joys and concerns. Ruby, are you ready for joys and concerns? I'm sorry, said that wrong. We're putting off joys and concerns till the end. We now come to a story for all ages.
Me,
Ruby?
like me.
And the peanut gallery there's behind me. Here we go.
But I don't see any pan.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I could see your
We can see
screen.
your
We see a we see a Windows File Explorer with a bunch of images.
You do?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, I need to select a different one, apparently.
You have to unshare
Yeah.
I got it.
and then share again.
New share.
And it's usually easiest to pick the top left corner and then whatever you show on your screen, we'll see.
Full screen share. Now? I missed it. Okay, 1 minute.
Now just go to the one you want us to see.
Shared down there. Okay. Well, there's 3 share buttons, guys. Okay, here we go. Thank you guys for being patient. Okay. Can everyone see an orange block that, pardon me,
Yep.
that you
It
and
says
me?
to you and me.
Okay. Thank you, guys. So this is the story of the cracked pot. Oh, and I'm Miss Ruby, and today I'll be reading the story of the cracked pot, also known as the water bearer's garden. So does anyone know how before people had pipes in their house, or for people that don't have pipes in their house, how they get water? A well, yeah, but what if the well isn't right at their front door? How do they get the water back to their house?
The river. They start a stream to their house.
They
maybe?
start a stream to their house? Well, maybe something, but what if the whole village has to share the well? It can't go to everyone's house.
Pot
Maybe they carry it back.
with the barrel.
Well, there's different ways to carry it back. Here's one way with something that looks kind of like a backpack, some kind of barrel on this guy's back. Here's a woman with a vase on her shoulder and another one with a vase on her head. But the kind of container we'll be talking about today, well, sometimes people use earthen pots and they will have them tied to a stick and across their back so that there's a container on each side, kind of like what this little girl is doing with the plastic jugs, but really more like that with the earthen container. Same concept, but a different kind of container. So without further ado, I'll start the story. An old man had 2 large pots, each hung on one end of a pole that he carried across his neck, like this, to get water. One of the pots had a crack in it. Do you guys see the pot dripping there? Drip, drip, drip. At the end of the long walk from the stream back to his house, the cracked pot arrived only half full, while the other pot was perfect and always delivered a full portion of water. For years, this went on every day, with the man returning only 1.5 pots full of water to his house. Of course, the perfect pot was proud of its accomplishments. Perfect to the end for which it was made, for doing its job. It could carry all its water back. But the poor cracked pot was ashamed of its own imperfection and miserable that it was able to accomplish only half of what it had been made to do. After years of what it thought to be bitter failure, it spoke to the old man one day by the stream, and it said, "I am ashamed of myself, and I want to apologize to you." "Why?" asked the old man. "What are you ashamed of?" And the pot said, "I have been able for these past years to deliver only half my load because this crack in my side causes water to leak out all the way back to your house. Because of my flaws, you have to do all this work and you don't get full value from your efforts," the pot said. The old man felt sorry for the cracked pot, and in his compassion, he said, as we return to my house, I want you to notice the beautiful flowers along the path." Then as they went up the hill, the old cracked pot took notice of the sun warming the beautiful wild flowers on the side of the path. And this cheered it some. "Look at those beautiful flowers." I lost my place. Okay, this cheered it some, but at the end of the trail, it still felt sad because it had leaked out half its load. So again, the pot apologized to the bearer for its failure. "I'm sorry." And the bearer said to the pot, "Did you notice that there were flowers only on your side of the path, but not on the other pot's side? That's because I have always known about your flaw, and I took advantage of it. I planted flower seeds on your side of the path, and every day while we walk back from the stream, you've watered them. For years, I have been able to pick beautiful flowers to decorate my table. Without you being just the way you are, I would not have this beauty to grace my house." We all have our own unique flaws. We are all cracked pots. In God's great web of life, nothing goes to waste. Don't be afraid of your flaws. Acknowledge them, and you too can be the cause of beauty. Know that in our weakness, we find our strength. You've got to take each person for what they are and look for the good in them. Some people say there is beauty in broken things. And I really liked this one. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And then I found this saying too, filled with light, the broken soul shines out into a dark world. What did you guys think of this story?
Good.
Good?
Pretty good.
Okay, and are you guys perfect? Like the perfect pot? No one is perfect, right? Except for the girl in Encanto. Well, I'm not sure about that. But what makes you special and unique? Your cracks, because those make you who you are. And I don't ask that you're perfect, right? What do I ask you to do?
Try my best.
Do your best. That's right. Love you. Love you. Sam. Okay, I am done.
Oh, okay, Ruby, that was really, really a good story.
Thank you all for your attention.
And I really liked it. It was a good lesson, even for children and adults, to be reminded of. Okay.
Can I show something that's directly apropos that I disappeared for for a second. I'm gonna stand up. Hopefully you can see it. This with hooks on the end here. What my little 4'8" grandmother used to put around her neck to go down to the stream to bring the water back to the house.
Wow.
So wasn't all that long ago.
Right.
What are the odds that you had it right there?
Yeah, it's in my sunroom. My sister and I each got one thing that came from the farm. I got this and my sister got a wooden rake.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Now we come to the offertory. Our fellowship has existed for over 50 years because over those years, our members and friends have generously contributed the knowledge and labor needed to build and maintain our physical structure, the vision, imagination, and creativity to create our programs, compassion and love for each other to make us feel at home, and the hospitality that welcomed new people into our community. That is a lot. But at this time in the service, we ask for one more ingredient that is necessary to keep this good thing going: additional financial support. You could contribute by going to the chat box at any time during the service, and click on the link under the word donate, and then do the rest. I want to also note at this time that some of you may know that we pay our speakers. We give a fee. And our speaker was this speaker, Stephen Cook, is particularly generous, and he has donated his fee back to the fellowship. So I thank him very much. Okay. This morning, our speaker's topic is related to our 7 principles. I really like the statement of our principles. In just a few short, clearly written phrases, this statement touches on most of my values. And I know there are others who feel the same. We have all seen them many times, but this morning, I think it is worthwhile to hear them again before our speaker's presentation to remind us exactly what they say. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. In his essay called 7 Principles, 7 Stars, the UU minister Greg Morrow writes the following: our principles serve as 7 guiding stars, but stars are more than just points of distant light. They have heat and mass and gravity. They pull us toward themselves, while they also radiate power towards us, through us, and beyond us. He then goes on to say, our principles move in a beautiful arc from the individual to society to the cosmos and back again, an opening and expanding circle that includes everyone and everything. They end leaving us in reverent silence within the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. Okay, now we will have hymn 121, We'll Build a Land, and I will project those words. Okay, Carly. Okay, Carly, thank you. The 7 principles are the central feature of my UU identity. And I know there are others who feel the same. But can they actually help guide us in challenging situations? In his presentation, Principles and Perpetrators, our speaker, Steve Cook, will show us how the guidance of our principles fare in the sometimes harsh light of the legal system. And he is well suited to address this. Steve is an active member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Wayne County in Worcester, Ohio. He has written and delivered many sermons, is recognized by the UUA as a certified lay minister, and is an attorney. Steve.
Can you hear me okay, Alan?
What's that? Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Pottstown. It sure is good to be with you. I see people waving a bit there. Today's chat, and I'll shorten it a little bit so I can keep within the time limit. And for those of you who want to start your stopwatches, it'll be, I don't know, 23, 24, 25 minutes long, but we'll see how it goes. My title, Principles and Perpetrators, is really about half right. The principles part is right, but the perpetrators part isn't quite so right, because I'm going to talk a bit more about people other than perpetrators. I'll be talking about some victims, talking about judges, the legal system, and the like. Need to give you a little bit of background so that what I'm going to talk about will make sense. I've been a lawyer for 25 years or so. Started law school late in life at 48, and I retired in 2013. Going to law school at 48 was that was an interesting experience. Went into private practice right out of law school, had a partnership in Worcester, which is south or west of Akron, and then went to the law school and taught at the law school for a number of years. If you're interested in lots of curious stories about misdemeanors, I'll talk about that in a second. And this is a shameless commercial. One of the books I've written is called Lawyer, I Love You. And it's a story I'll tell you here in a minute. And it's all about starting law school late in life and all sorts of the stories in jails and prisons and the like. It's on Amazon and Kindle. And if you have difficulty sleeping, keep it next to your bed, a couple of pages of that, and you'll be out like a light. At the law school, one of the things I did was to run a trial litigation clinic. Now, the name's a little bit misleading because we did do trials, but most of what we did was to represent misdemeanors. Now, misdemeanors in Ohio are much different from misdemeanors in Pennsylvania. Misdemeanors in Pennsylvania are pretty draconian. The highest level misdemeanor in Pennsylvania, you can have 5 years in prison from what I've read. In Ohio, the highest level of misdemeanor is a first-degree misdemeanor, punishable by up to 6 months in jail and or $1,000 fine. And that goes all the way down to a minor misdemeanor, which would be a speeding ticket, for instance. Maximum penalty, $150 and no fine. Trial litigation clinic allows a third-year law student, if they've been vetted by the Ohio Supreme Court, to get a learner's permit. They can come with a licensed attorney and they can represent misdemeanors. So one of the things that we would do was visit jails and prisons and work with people, misdemeanors who had violated the law. One of the things I'm going to do today is talk about 3 of our principles, the first, the second, and the fourth. The inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But I'm going to talk about them using a template that was put together by a very well-known UCC minister, the Reverend Marie Fortune. She had a template for what she believed was making justice. It has 7 parts to it. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the ones that are relevant here, the first of her template is acknowledgement. She thinks it's important to recognize, to affirm, to value persons, and particularly those persons who are in trouble with the justice system. One of the others of hers is truth-telling. I'll get to that. It's pretty self-explanatory, and then also compassion. I was using our 7 principles way before I even knew there were 7 principles. When I was in private practice and then partnership, we did some things that tried to affirm our clients. One of the things we did was kind of a ruse. We had a nice office in Akron on the 4th floor of an office building, and a nice waiting room. I would go out when a client was due. I'd say the client's name. The client would come up, I'd shake hands, and as we were walking back toward my office, I'd say to one of our wonderful ladies, please hold my calls. Now that was a ruse because I never got calls directly, but it made the client feel important. Got back into the office, and then I would go through a routine. In my office, I had my chair, and then I had a couple of client chairs opposite me, and in the middle was a table. And I would sit down and I would say that I've got to do my little thing here. And I'd start like that. And I'd say, everything we talk about today is privileged and confidential, cannot be disclosed to any third party without your express written permission. And of probably 1,000 people I said that to, not one ever asked me what it meant. So they just would kind of smile and, we would move on. But that made them feel that they were being affirmed or that they were being acknowledged. Our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The inherent. I love that word. There's a definition of it called firmly infixed. And that's a little bit fanciful, but inherent. It's almost inborn. The inherent worth and dignity of every person, not just some persons. We're taught in law school, and I learned and I taught, hate the crime and not the criminal. You know, a robbery is a robbery is a robbery is a robbery. But the people who commit robberies and the reasons why they commit robberies and the like are extremely varied. One of the clients we had in the Summit County Jail, and Summit County is where Akron is located, and it's more like a prison than it is a jail. Lots of razor wire and lots of big thick doors and guards walking around. But I had a student with me, and she was going to have her first interview with a client. And our client was Dazzle. I would love to tell you his last name because it's as cool as his first name. It wasn't D-A-Z-Z-L-E, it was D-A-Z-Z-E-L. But Dazzle was an African-American gentleman, very slight, probably 130 pounds, mid-50s, lifetime alcoholic, oftentimes homeless. And what Mr. Dazzle would do when the weather got lousy, he would put on a stocking cap and he would go out on the road in front of his house and he would begin a speech to all the cars driving by. Now, most of the speech was 4-letter words, the majority of which began with an F. And he would also do some digital communicating. And you can imagine what digit he was used to communicate. Now, while he was doing this communicating with his stocking cap on, that's all he had on because he wanted to get arrested. He wanted 3 hots and a cot. He knew if he was arrested that he'd be taken to jail, he'd have meals, he'd have a place to sleep. So we had Mr. Dazzle in jail, and the student is dutifully looking down at her sheet here to get started. And we weren't 30 seconds into that interview, and Mr. Dazzle got right up in the student's face and he said, "You like my hair?" And she just was dumbstruck. I mean, it was like a deer in the headlights. She didn't know what to say. Now, the backstory here is that Dazzle had taken a little bit of his commissary. The inmates there have commissaries, a little bit of money they can use to get haircuts and gum and cigarettes and everything else. He had given it to another inmate to try to give him cornrows. You know, now Dazzle had a head like mine. It is virtually impossible to do cornrows. There just isn't enough hair there to make it work. But what the guy did was he tried his best, and it looked like on Dazzle's head, like there were all these little Amish corn stalks. And it was really kind of odd looking, but nonetheless, the student was dumbstruck. So I turned to Dazzle and I said, "Mr. Dazzle, I think your hair is wonderful." He looked at me with his gap-toothed smile and he went, "Lawyer, I love you." That's where the title of the book comes from. The student learned something and he was affirmed. I'll make this story faster. We had a lady who had a son who was horribly mentally handicapped. He'd throw himself up against walls. He'd sit in his own excrement. He'd scream 24/7, and the woman just had enough. She got a snoot full of booze, drove her truck right into a truck trying to kill herself. Well, she didn't kill herself. She had almost 4 times the legal limit of alcohol in Ohio, and it's a wonder she didn't kill herself. But she was in jail, and I had another student with me, a bit older, and she was, the student was interviewing this woman, and the woman started to just bawl, just a river. She said, "You must think I'm a horrible person. You must think I'm a terrible person." Student reached over, put her hand on the woman's shoulder and said, "We don't think you're a terrible person. We just think that you're a good person in a terrible situation." So she was affirmed the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Truth telling, it's pretty much self-explanatory. Our 4th principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, I'm kind of turning that a little bit on its head, but the importance of telling the truth in the justice system is incredibly important. My partner and I, when I had the partnership, we hadn't been in practice 2 weeks. There were 2 of us. We had an Amish guy come in. and he had been joined in a lawsuit with a large commercial issue. And he was being sued along with a bunch of other subcontractors by the largest law firm in Ohio. These folks had over 200 lawyers, and there's two of us. Well, he came in and wanted us to represent him. He started telling us the story, and I looked at my partner, Chris, kind of sideways, and we both knew that this was not going to work. But we said, could you come back and let us look into the importance, or rather look into your case? He said, sure. So I got a lawyer friend of mine who does this kind of work, and he said he'd take the case if the client agreed. The Amish fella came back a couple days later. We had him in the conference room, and we said, we just don't think that we're capable of taking your case. We're small, and we don't believe that we have the expertise to do it. Now, we have talked to another lawyer that will take the case if you want to. I'll never remember this, never forget this as long as I live. He looked over at us and he said, boys, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna give you boys $40,000, whether you win or lose, because I think you boys is honest. Well, we were honest. We didn't take his $40,000. We got him with the other attorney. When I left the partnership, he still had $10,000 in a retainer and gave us all sorts of Amish referrals. I represented a young lady who was arrested at our local drug mart in Worcester. Worcester is about 40 miles west of Akron, if you don't know where it is. And she was charged with stealing 3 of these 33-ounce soda bottles from the drugstore. Well, I went to see her in jail and I said, you know, what's going on? She said, well, it was a hot day and I was thirsty and I took these bottles into the drugstore. Yeah, I thought, okay. Now she's telling me it's a hot day. This happened about 9:30 on a Sunday morning. I happened to be about 6 blocks north of there in church, and it was about 50 degrees, and there's no way you needed 3 bottles of 33-ounce Mountain Dew or whatever it was. So she was a candidate for the trial game. I said, tell you what, you said that you didn't steal these 3 bottles. We're going to play a game. Did it right in the jail. I said, we're going to pretend that we're in court and that you're on the stand and that I'm questioning you about what happened. She said, okay. So I said, now, were you, I asked her name and all that stuff first. And I said, were you present at the drug mart on such and such a date? Yes. I said, well, what happened at the drug mart? He said, oh, they accused me of stealing 3 bottles of Pepsi. I said, well, what size bottles were these? Well, they were bigger. And I said, well, what, you didn't steal them? Of course I didn't steal them. It was hot. I took them into the drugstore. I stopped her right there. I said, let me think for a second. You just told me that you took 3 of these 33-ounce bottles into the drugstore. What do you think the jury is going to think about that? She paused for about 15 seconds and she said, that I'm lying. I said, probably. So we pled her out. She didn't get any jail time. But as we were leaving court, and I did this many times with clients, I said, what, if anything, have you learned from this experience? And she looked at me with a straight face and she said, steal smaller bottles. So, she told the truth, and luckily we got through that. Compassion is something I've seen hundreds of times, especially with people who have committed crimes. Compassion in a legal context, when we say the inherent worth and dignity of every person, I have seen so many decent people just do stupid things. They're decent, but they just do dumb things for whatever reason, I don't know. But I have seen compassion with people work many, many times. Had a big burly truck driver in. His wife had left him. He wanted me to do his divorce, and behind closed doors, he starts to tell me his story, and he's just bawling. I mean, here's a big guy like this. And I remember all I did was put my hand on his shoulder. And I said, we're going to get through this. It's going to be okay. And he calmed down, and we ultimately got through it. I'll do something a bit different here. And I don't know how this works with your group there, but I would be happy to entertain a question or two. And no, I can't represent you because I'm retired. I'm a magistrate in the local mayor's court, and that's about all I do anymore. I seldom tell people I'm an attorney when I'm at parties and the like, because I always get, I have a friend, you know, can you help my friend? And oh yeah, sure. So I don't know if anybody's got a question that they'd like to ask. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee.
CJ, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, I know that, you know, the justice system has changed quite a bit over the past few years. What do you believe do you believe that the justice system is moving closer to our precepts or concepts of inherent worth and dignity and all that? Or do you think it is moving farther away from that in recent years?
You know, I should put the light like this. You're really putting me in the spotlight here with that question. That's a hard one to answer. I'll tell you a couple of things. At the local level, and I'm talking now about the kind of court I have, which is just low-level stuff, municipal courts. I don't think jurors, and I'll get around to answer your question in a second, I don't think jurors really understand jury instructions or the procedure. But in the hundreds of ones I've been involved with, they almost always get it right because they're using common sense. So on a lower level, a local level, I think that the courts, the judges and the like are doing what they are supposed to do. The Supreme Court, you know, are we headed, do I think, toward our first principle? No. I think we have let truth become a very malleable commodity. I don't know what the truth is anymore. And I stopped in terms of watching the news. I give up because, you know, you go this way, you go red, you go blue, who knows? So the truth, I think, is difficult. Justice, I don't know. It worries me. I'm just glad I'm 76 and a half. No, I'm glad I'm not 46 and a half. So that doesn't answer your question, but I don't think we're heading the right direction. At the big level, lower level, these folks they know what they're doing and they do their job and everything's fine.
Okay.
Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. What's the, I'm my cousin's husband out in Santa Cruz, California. It's a long convoluted story but they had the public defender's account for Santa Cruz County. Now it's going to be taken in over by the county. And it's a very transient community and they have a lot of crime. And so when I was out there one summer, I was reading a very horrible case. I won't even get into what happened. But he had a lot of murder. So and there was one most recently that my sister and I had to Google because they wouldn't tell us about it. And it was one where one child had killed another child. And when you read about the kid who did the killing, I think he was 11 or 12. He was very young. He may have been a little older, maybe 13, but he wasn't beyond that. And where, as the defense attorney, you've got the entire town ready to just, lynch this kid. But on the other hand, as the attorney, you've got to say, look at this child and what made him do what he did. And they didn't even go to court. They didn't go to trial. They did a plea. So I guess they were seeing the inherent worth in the killer, even though it was brutal. And I mean, the victim was 7. I guess, did you have any cases like that were just that horrible?
Yes. We don't have enough time. I remember one in particular, mid-40s man who was sexually abusing a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. I got the case. It was an appointed case. Appointed cases in Ohio, good news, bad news. The good news is you're going to get paid. It's not very much. The bad news is it'll be a while, but this was appointed by the court, and he was abusing the 4-year-old and the 7-year-old, and we're behind closed doors. And he's trying to tell me that the 4-year-old and the 7-year-old wanted this. Well, you learn as a lawyer, you have a game face and you don't react to stuff and you just let them talk. Talking about the inherent the worth and dignity of every person. I wanted to reach over in my mind and punch the guy right in the mouth. But I looked at him like this. After a while, he starts bawling. He said, I did it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. He told the truth, which was good. It goes back to the truth telling. He's in prison as we speak, but he did get a decent program. Now, whether he'll recommit when he gets out, I haven't a clue. But I could tell you, but we don't have time.
Yeah. I guess the question is, how do you, I mean, I know like I said, they wouldn't even tell us. We had to Google this story. And I know they had a hard time dealing with these things. One time, one of her friends said, well, what do you do when your husband's clients come to visit? She said, I don't want my husband's clients even knowing where I live.
Yeah.
But I watched he still maintained a really good attitude about things. Do you have to shut yourself off?
Absolutely.
From what you're hearing?
Well, you don't shut yourself off. Remember what I said, hate the crime and not the criminal. And it's so difficult sometimes, especially when you first start out. I was in law school, and the very first case I had in the clinic that I was to do the appeal for was a man who had sodomized his young daughter with a broomstick. I read the facts and I told the guy in the clinic, I can't do this. This is so abhorrent to me. And he looked at me and he said, Steve, you can do it and you will do it. And I did it. You learn how to compartmentalize because you got a job to do. And I know, I don't care how heinous the crime is, and we've had plenty of heinous crimes. My job as a defender is to defend this person. Hate the crime, not the criminal.
Yeah.
And I never would let them know where I live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's an amazing thing having known, I mean, I love this man. He's my cousin and the lawyer. And just the things that criminal defense attorneys take a lot of heat. So I'm gonna say I admire what you do, because you do take heat, because people go, why are you defending this horrible person? So the fact that you do what you do, I mean, the criminal defense attorneys put up with a lot of crap. The defending giving people their constitutional rights. Basically, you're giving people what they are constitutionally entitled to have.
My response to that
And-
is amen.
And I think people sometimes forget that people are entitled to constitutionally these rights. And when we were talking about the Supreme Court, wasn't there a decision one time where they came down? I don't know if it was Thomas or somebody say, well, actual innocence really doesn't play here. Where somebody had appealed to the Supreme Court and they were actually innocent. Well, that doesn't matter. The process was followed.
I'm going to revert to, I can neither confirm nor deny.
I have
I have
question.
okay, go ahead.
Okay, I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse, but I've been thinking about this for quite some time. If someone ignores a congressional subpoena to testify, what else happens to that person besides being censured?
They're referred to justice.
I'm going to refer to the importance of truth telling and answer your question like this. I have absolutely no idea.
I'm beside myself with the fact that people can still go out after disobeying a subpoena and still be spreading information that's not true and that's incendiary. How can that be allowed?
I share that frustration. It's just, we have two 2-minute rules in our house, in the Cook household. One of them is talking about Trump and the other one is talking about bridge. Because if my wife starts talking about Trump, after 2 minutes, she's foaming at the mouth. And if she talks for more than 2 minutes about bridge, I am. So we just don't, I don't know how to answer that question. I'll put it on a very local level. Here in Ohio, they have now made possession of marijuana. They don't even arrest people. And I'm one of these guys who says, come on. And they don't arrest them because they don't have a test good enough now to distinguish between hemp and marijuana. They made hemp legal last year. So now they can't test between the two. So now they just don't arrest anybody.
Well, how can I find this out? Let me tell you the exact thing that bothers me the most, and I will stop talking about this, but that Steve Bannon has a radio podcast that is spreading so much evil stuff. How can that be when he disobeyed a subpoena? If I would disobey a subpoena, I'd be in jail, I think. Is that right?
That's two questions. One is, how can he do it? First Amendment, is it right? In my mind, no. But I turn it off anymore. There's so many kooks out there spreading this crap. I just rather read a book. And I get so irritated. And then my blood pressure goes up, and then I got to take a pill. I suck.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
we don't allow it before bedtime.
Not pills
Oh.
or
No, we
I-
don't allow the political discussions
No,
like
oh,
after
no,
8 o'clock
no,
at night.
uh-uh.
They stop.
absolutely.
I have I'm going to go for another few minutes. So I have probably a difficult question that would take more than a few minutes, but I'll just say it. We have this thing called the Fifth Amendment, or there are aspects of the Fifth Amendment. And one of them is you can't be compelled to testify against yourself. And I've always been, I wonder about that one. And why can't, what is the, I think I know the justification, but it seems like it wouldn't be so bad if there's probable cause that somebody committed a crime, that a prosecutor can call this person to the stand subpoena him and say, where were you on the night of August 13th, 1995? Now, I know people say, well, maybe he could be forced to answer that question and incriminate himself, but he still could be, but if force is going to be used, he could be forced to come to the stand on his own. So I find that, I just comment on that. Maybe that's beyond.
Now, the Fifth Amendment thing is against self-incrimination. It goes back to the fact that we are innocent until proven guilty. And it is not the person's, like the defendant's responsibility to prove that he or she isn't guilty. It is the state's responsibility to prove that they are. And, you see the Fifth Amendment prostituted so badly in these hearings now, where one of the people I read took the Fifth Amendment over 400 times. They're allowed to. And what happens is they just have to come, I'm talking about someone who's a prosecutor, has got to come to that answer a different way. But you can't have the defendant forced to incriminate himself. It's not up to him, it's up to the state to figure it out. I don't like it, but it's the way it is.
Well, I know that's the way it is, but okay, well, that's an interesting perspective on that. I'm glad you mentioned that. I still think that I would be happier if the prosecutor could call him a person with his probable cause and ask him where he was on the night of August 13th. But that's.
I was at my mother's birthday party in 1995.
Okay. I think we've run a little over time. We got started late. So I'm going to call it to an end. And I'm going to extinguish the chalice, which is almost, you can't see it, but it's still lit, but it's almost extinguished on its own. Maybe it's got bored with my question and,
Nope.
and extinguished itself. So let me find these words. Oh, there it extinguishes. We end our service today by extinguishing the chalice. May the memory of its light and the light of this service stay with us. Thank you, Steve. We're going to go on to joys and concerns. And Rick, would you stop the recording?